For the first time in a generation, the power lies with workers, not their bosses. And even in good employers are watching as dozens, possibly even hundreds of employees hand in their notice, whether it's due to a lack of connection with their organization, a lack of engagement, or even perhaps not feeling a sense of purpose. So I'm delighted to be joined today by Emily Miller, who's VP of Sales EMEA at Workhuman, to explore how big the problem really is, and then what the key causes are, and what reward and benefit practitioners can do to stem the flow. So, Emily, what is going on? Why are we seeing so many employees handing in their notice at the moment?
Yeah. Well, firstly, let me say it's great to be here today. So, thanks for having me. You're completely right. As I think everyone is seeing, there's been a palpable shift in power where employees across the past 18 months and now more than ever are just much more certain of what they will and won't accept in the workplace. And for those companies that are not putting the human at the center, employees are very happy to jump ship. We did a survey at Workhuman with over 3,500 employees from the UK, Ireland, America, and Canada. And we found that 4 in 10 are looking to change their roles across the next 12 months. And so you only have to do some quick maths, right, to see the potential impact this could have on cost of turnover and the bottom line. And it's doubled across the past year. Not a huge surprise, I don't think, for anyone, right? Given the stress and isolation that employees have experienced. And I've spent my time speaking to companies across EMEA, and they're all, the number one concern consistently is around social connection. A third of the workers that are looking to leave have cited more flexibility as their major reason for looking for a new role. Other reasons include better culture, not wanting to work for the same manager, title, pay, and so on. But it all comes together to really mean that for many of, I suppose the people watching this and the people that we're speaking with daily, addressing this is the kind of number one challenge of the moment.
So it's interesting there that you say in your study you found that 4 in 10 say they'll be planning to leave in the next 12 months. So how do you think this trend is going to play out over the coming 12 months?
Yeah, I don't see it changing anytime soon. Again, the question we asked was across the next 12 months, right? So, best case scenario, this slows down this time next year. At the same time, what we all know is the world of work has changed forever, right? And for companies that aren't catching up and aren't putting the employee at the center, they're the ones that aren't going to be benefiting from what we call at Workhuman the talent swap. What we're seeing is this kind of 3 distinct choices companies can make. They can do nothing and just hope that this goes away. They can get into a salary war, right? Which, it's not going to be great for anyone's bottom line. Or they can be the destination, right, for where employees are going. And they can do this by building a culture which attracts and retains those employees.
So those are really interesting points that you raise there. So strategically, what should employers then be thinking about to mitigate that great resignation that we're talking about?
Yeah. So the biggest advice that we would share is to focus on appreciation. It is one of the most valuable ways through having a culture of gratitude, right, that you can build employees' ties both to each other and to the organization. We say a lot here at Workhuman, right, that gratitude is a currency of human connection, and never before has this been so important. And there's sort of a magic moment that happens when people are recognized. What we found through our work is that if employees are recognized in the past month, not only are they twice as likely to be engaged, 3 times as likely to feel that their work has meaning, 4 times as likely to be happy. But here is the icing on the cake, or the cherry on the cake, one of the two. The giver is also then twice as likely to be engaged, right? And 3 times as likely to find meaning in their work. So it has this wonderful 360 effect. And multiply that, right, across the entire organization. And you can see quickly how this can shift an entire culture. And, what I like to say when I'm speaking to people about gratitude is think about the last time you were thanked, right? And how did that make you feel? And the power of it and the strategic impact it can have is huge.
So, from an HR strategy point of view, so looking perhaps a bit bigger picture, what are the people-driven objectives that our viewers today should be aiming for?
Yeah. Well, the first thing that we would suggest, right, is focus on having an employee recognition program, which systemizes and makes it easy for employees to recognize each other for the values that matter to your company. I think that would be the number one. The other one would be all around communication. So everyone watching this knows, right, that the way of working has changed. Sadly, the way, many of the HR systems that we have in place aren't structured for this new environment. And we can't rely anymore on hallway chats for employees to connect, for important messages to cascade and so on. And so then once again, the manager becomes a focal point for ensuring that there's the right check-ins, the one-on-ones, and asking the employees for feedback around how they're feeling. And again, something we'd suggest is that, for companies out there that are dealing with this, that they have some kind of way of tracking employee sentiment through a pulse survey or else, and they're being transparent about the steps they're taking to act on it.
So having looked at the broader HR perspective, and if we can now sort of drill down to reward and benefit practitioners more specifically about what they in their roles can do to either stem those resignations or be the company where talent wants to land, what ideas would you give them?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to focus again on building that culture of thanks and ongoing communication. So if you go to thanks first, the reality is very often the way pay is structured does not reflect the modern workforce. Very often these pay structures were designed 100 years ago, right? And how different do we look today? And so our biggest recommendation for anyone watching this today would be think about how you use your salary budget. Rather than having an annual review, even biannual, think about ongoing peer-to-peer recognition, where it's sort of a portion of the salary budget is sprinkled throughout the year instead. And we see continuously the impact that this has on talent outcomes is vastly superior than historical these historical annual reviews. So that would be sort of number one and at the forefront. The other one, again, going back to communication, is ensure you have a way of listening to employees across the workday, whether it's through a pulse survey or other ways. Listen to them, let them have that voice and ability to share feedback and employee sentiment, and again, act on it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting comment you make about pay, because that's the kind of thing I'm hearing from REBA members, of people rethinking pay in different ways and in a way I've not heard before. You obviously speak to a lot of your clients. You have huge experience also across a number of different employers doing different things. What kind of ideas are you seeing employers use at the moment? Maybe an example of what some of your clients are doing.
Yeah. So what we always say about recognition and why it's almost like the world's, best kept secret or best kept secret is that recognition is a human need. Regardless of what geography you sit in, what industry you're in, how big your company is, when you are recognized, it just feels good. Right? And you feel appreciated. And then guess what happens when we feel appreciated? We do the same thing again and even better. And then if people see what behaviors, I'm being recognized for, guess what? They do it too. So it just has this wonderful impact across an entire organization that is all positive, right? And whilst we have lots of HR systems out there that do great work, right, this positive, feel good impact doesn't really exist in them, right? And that's what recognition does. So it works everywhere. For the purposes of today, I'll give an example of one of our larger clients, which is AstraZeneca, and simply because everyone is everyone's heard of them now. And they're right in the press for all the great work they've been doing in the fight against COVID. And they launched a global recognition program with Workhuman in the midst of the COVID pandemic, right, as a way to thank their workers. And you can imagine how hard they were working during that time. And they wanted to make sure that they were strengthening their culture of innovation by rewarding the patient-centric values that AstraZeneca sort of, holds so dear. And it was incredible to see, the impact of the program almost instantly. So within their first year, a recognition moment was happening every 1.1 second on the platform. And again, if you take a step back to think about how this changes your culture once you're in a celebration of positivity and thanks, it's quite incredible. And they were already beginning to see incredible impact in some of their most important outcomes around, increasing engagement, lowering turnover, and so on. So, that's just at a very high level. If you think about what recognition does and the power of it, beyond the impact it has on the employee, right? It impacts engagement, reduces turnover, strengthens culture, drives inclusion, all these things that I speak to companies about every day that they're grappling with. And which is why it's almost this, a no-brainer that it should be at the forefront of a strategic lever for most companies. I could go on and on, but
No, I think yes, there's a lot to talk about this, and as you said, there's a lot of challenges that all come together here. So if somebody's listening to this and going, yes, these are the challenges I'm facing right now in my organization, I'm meant to be dealing with this, what advice would you give them to get started?
Yeah, so I would sort of separate it out between individuals and businesses, right? If I'm an individual in a business today, and I believe in this, right? It is so simple to get started. Just take some time out of your day every day to thank someone, right? Call them up, see them in person, write them a note, and thank someone for the impact they've had, what they've done. And again, you'll start to see that spread very quickly, right? Because if you're recognized, you're much more welcome, you're much more likely then to give recognition and so on. For businesses that are interested in starting the journey but don't know where to start, my biggest recommendation would be to call someone like Workhuman, right? Whether you choose us or not as your provider isn't the point here. It's about to get advice around how to get started and what to do so you can begin that journey.
Fantastic. And that is really good advice. So thank you so much for sharing your insights, sharing some of your research findings, and some of those practical examples of what's happening out in the real world, and hopefully inspiring those viewing today. So such a top of mind issue that people are really grappling with. So your insights today, really invaluable, Emily. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it.